Hi everyone, and welcome to the Mixed Media Mania second YouTube hop along with many of my artsy friends. There's some amazing artists in this hop and of course some amazing prizes from these sponsors that you see over here. There's so many sponsors and so many prizes. It's just amazing, and all you have to do is just subscribe to all the channels once you see the video. At the end of my video, there's a link to the next channel so you can see the next video, and that is how you hop along. I'm also giving away my own prize from my channel, and all you have to do is just subscribe to my channel and leave me a comment below. You should leave a comment on every single one of the channels because prizes will be chosen randomly between the channels, so you don't know where they will be chosen from. We have to thank these amazing sponsors that were so generous and gave us so many wonderful prizes. Some of them are US only, but all the other ones, and there's lots of them, are being shipped international, and you can enter from any place in the world. Just make sure you write what country you're from in the comments. I started by taking apart the two sides of the hearts and removing them off the discs. That's the reason why I love this journal so much, because I can remove the pages and work on a flat surface and then put them back into the journal. This really helps when you're using materials that are really wet and it doesn't damage the other sides of the journal, the other pages. So that way you can work continuously and you don't have any bumps or anything to worry about. I took some modeling paste and a Joggles stencil. This is called Floral Textured Leaves, and it's beautifully distressed leaves that you can add onto your pages. All materials are listed below in the description area. I took my Prima Finnabair silicone brush and applied the Finnabair modeling paste in some areas of the heart. I wanted the leaves to drape around the edges of the heart to create really nice movement along the shape of the heart. So I didn't add the leaves everywhere, just in certain areas. Some on the right side, some at the bottom, and some on the left side. Because I wanted to add a continuation between the two pages, I closed the two pages together and I put the stencil on top of the middle bottom area. You have to be very careful to make sure you don't muck up the other things on the page. If you don't want to make any mistakes with that, you can always dry up the page first and then add the stencil in another area. You can also wash the stencil in between. But I'm very careful and I lift the stencil around, and even if it does get a little bit mucked up, I'm okay with that. The other nice thing is that because this is a removable page, you can turn them around and you can also separate them, and that makes it easier, so you can work on one page separately from the other as well, like I'm doing over here. Then when you put the pages together, they match perfectly wherever you use the stencil on both sides, and at the same time you were able to be careful with the other sides. I heat set the modeling paste, and then I wanted to use these amazing markers from Marabu. They're Aqua pen Graphix from Marabu, and they're water-soluble markers. They're just amazing. They have double-sided tips, so one of them act like marker and the other one is more like a brush, a hard brush, and they dissolve in water amazingly. Now the nice thing about these art journals that I'm using, this is the disc-bound watercolor art journal, which means that the paper is 140 pounds cold pressed watercolor paper. These markers work really nicely on this paper. I'm also using a water brush that is filled with water and can easily be used on these colors. All I have to do is just press it a little bit and it melts the color perfectly. It dissolves it and it creates a really beautiful watercolor effect. You can also use a spray bottle, which I will use as well in this layout, but I just wanted to show you the different ways that you can use. You can even use a regular paintbrush, a watercolor paintbrush, and just some water on your mat and dissolve everything. I started using a light blue color that I'm adding in certain areas just to blend the background and add some color to the background, and then I'm going to add the darker colors afterwards. I also added some of the lime green color just because I wanted some of it to be in certain areas to kind of bring that greenish look to the page as well. This is only a very light color, so it's good to add it only in certain areas. I like adding lots of color to my backgrounds, but I always start with the lighter colors and then continue with the darker ones. That way, if I make a mistake, I can always remedy it. The nice thing about the watercolor markers is that you can easily dab it out and it removes the color. So if you make a mistake, it's not a problem. I'm working only on one side of the heart, and then I will just do the same thing on the other side. Just for the purposes of this video, I like showing the one side and then just mimicking the same thing on the other side just to show the techniques. That way it makes it easier, so it takes less time to watch this video. So I'm just doing the one side, and then I will do similar colors on the other side. Of course, both sides don't ever turn exactly the same. With any artwork, even if I was doing them both at the same time, they would still not all turn the same. Now it was time to add some darker colors. I started with the next shade of blue, and I started adding it at the edges of the heart. I start adding it at the edges, and as it comes into the center, I blend them in and it becomes lighter. I want to make sure that the center is quite light and the edges are darker. So it's a good tip to start with the edges and then move the water all the way in. The more you wet it, the more it blends, and that helps with everything. Now I found that it was easier to heat set in between each layer. So every time I was adding a layer, I was drying the first layer and then I was adding another color, because while the background was wet, the markers would dilute too much and I really wanted to add the color. So it was a good idea to heat set it first. There's many ways of applying these markers. You could just go section by section, or you could just do a few sections at a time and then diluting them with the water. The good thing about it is that the markers don't embed into the background like other markers do and don't leave any streaks or any marks. So it's really nice, because even if you leave it for a little while on the paper while you're working on a different section, it still dilutes the watercolor perfectly. So they're really easy to use that way. Of course, I'm always listing all the products list below in the description area. And on top of it, Joggles, which are selling these markers, have an amazing promotion going on right now for them. So check out the links below, as it's really worth to get these markers if you've been looking for something like this. Finally, I went in with the darkest blue just to add some more layers and some more shades onto it. I love working with the blue, and here I'm bringing in the bottle so I could actually spray the water and let it dilute into the center. So I spray a little bit of water and then use my paintbrush to dilute it all in. And that really helps to create that really nice watercolor effect. I also added a little bit of the darker green. It's almost like an aqua green. And I did the same thing. I added it to certain areas and then diluted it towards the inside. I continued alternating between the dark green and dark blue and just let it drip inside the page to really create those beautiful watercolor effects that I love so much. So that really helped to create this really cool background, and the watercolor would go in between the texture. It's really important to let the colors mix together, because that creates really beautiful pools of color that look amazing together. I even added some of the lime green so it would mix the dark and light colors together. And then I did the other side. I started again with the lime green and did the same process as I had done before. I heat set both sides really well, and then I took the black Aqua pen marker and I started outlining all the leaves and the little designs inside the leaves. It wasn't as easy to see the designs, but I was able to follow the modeling paste shape. So that helped to outline everything. And I outlined all the leaves on both sides, so that way they would really stand out. Then I took the aqua filled water brush and lightly added some water on the black marker to kind of dilute the edges and make it look more distressed. This really helped to create these beautiful shapes around the leaves, and it made it look like there were less lines and more natural. So I really liked how it turned out, and I just added it all around the edges to make sure that all the leaves look the same. I really wanted the leaves to stick out from the background a little bit more, so I took some white paint. This is a zinc white paint. It's not a fully opaque white paint. It's actually more translucent, which really helped to just add it to the background, which meant that it wouldn't hide the color in the background, but it helped to lighten it, so that way the leaves would stand out more from the background. They would kind of stand out and would come out from it. This is a golden product, and all I'm doing is using first a very small flat brush, and then I took a smaller brush to get in between all the leaves. As you can see, the nice thing about this page is that I can rotate them around, and since they're not inside a book, it's much easier to rotate the pages, and that way you can apply the materials much easier. So I am literally covering everything in between the leaves and on the edges, and some of it even inside. I did leave the center alone, but everything else I covered. Looking back, I wish I would have left it in this stage where it was just the white background or the lighter background with the leaves. But I always feel like I need to frame my art journals, so I started adding the black again on the edges. But instead of just adding it at the edge, I started putting it more towards the inside. It felt like it needed black. I find it with my art journals that I always like adding both black and white and working with the light and the shadow. With any painting, this happens as well. I also ran out a little bit out of my water inside the water brush, so I started putting water on my mat and using the brush that way as well. So that's why I said you can use any type of brush for this. I did realize that it needs a darker black in between the leaves in some areas to make sure that they kind of stand out and to bring those shadows in certain areas. So I started adding the marker again in black in between some of the leaves, but I did apply more pressure because I wanted it to look really black. I didn't want it to look grayish. And I went around both sides of the heart to add some black on the edges. I did have to go over the black again once it was dry with a second layer. That way it would really stand out from the background. But as you can see, when you only add it in certain areas, it really makes the leaves stand out even more. Then I took the black marker and added some of it to my mat. This is the Ken Oliver mat, which is an amazing mat for everything because it cleans everything really well. And then I added some water to it to dilute it and create my own watercolor solution. That way I could splatter some beautiful black splatters in the background. And that's what I did. I just took a small paintbrush and just splattered the black in the background. Then I took a black ink and a script stamp and added some script images in the background. I love adding these type of images, and especially in some areas of my journals, to really make the look of the journal distressed. It makes it look more vintage. I took a regular white marker. This is the Vicki Boutin marker, and I started adding some highlights on the leaves. You really need to have a marker that is really good for mixed media, and this one actually did not a bad job. I also tried the Posca pen and the Sharpie, but they didn't work as well. This one worked a little bit better, but it is difficult to see the white a little bit, but it does add a few highlights here and there, which I like. Then I took the white paint that I had used before and diluted it with a little bit of water to add some white splatters to the background. I love adding white splatters as well because it really helps bring everything together. I even added a little bit of the white at the edges of my journal to just highlight those edges with a paintbrush. Then all I did is just stick some word stickers with the phrase that I wanted for my art journal and I popped it back into the disc bound art journal. That way it would stay in there and it just fitted perfectly and the two pages matched beautifully. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked my video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends on social media. If my video inspired you and you create something with it, please tag me on social media so I can see it. I would love to comment on it. Remember, to win prizes, you need to comment on each of the YouTube channels and subscribe to them. Contest runs until October 11th at 12 p.m. Pacific Time. Winners will be announced on October 19th on Didi's and Carissa's channel. I will also share the link on Facebook to see all the winners. Thank you so much and have an amazing day. Bye!